Thanks for tuning in to our bonus episode preview. This is just a short sample of this week's exclusive Patreon episode. You can hear the episode in its entirety by becoming a member at patreon.com/IndoctriNation, where you'll gain access to all of our exclusive episodes and merchandise. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this special Patreon exclusive bonus episode with Andrew Pledger, host of the Beyond BJU podcast. The Beyond BJU podcast exposes Christian fundamentalism in the context of Bob Jones University. The podcast also features survivors from BJU and its affiliated ministries. And in this discussion, Andrew and I aim to define the subtle line between education and indoctrination. Andrew, a cult survivor himself, dives deep into his own experiences to explore the subtle tactics used to control information and manipulate beliefs. Together, we discuss the warning signs of indoctrination and how seemingly educational environments can morph into something far more sinister. This episode was recorded for Andrew's Beyond BJU podcast, which won't be released until later this summer, but we wanted to offer you, our Patreon supporters, early access as a thank you for your continued support. Here's Andrew now.
Hello, everyone. I am so happy to have Rachel Bernstein on the show today to really talk about a topic that has been on my mind a lot. And it's a topic, or really the question of, is education really indoctrination? Because we've seen a lot in the news, people saying that education is just indoctrination. And even as I've been calling out Bob Jones University, people will dismiss it by saying, oh, well, all education is indoctrination, so what you're saying doesn't really matter. So really excited to dig into that. But Rachel, for people who are not familiar with you, could you do a quick introduction?
I am a therapist and an educator and a cult specialist, and work with people who've been involved in cults, work with families who have loved ones in situations of control, work with people who have been in relationships with controllers, with malignant narcissists, and am the host of the podcast IndoctriNation that Andrew knows well. And thank you for being on the staff of that. And I'm a mom and busy. I'm doing my thing. And starting to put together a book. We'll see where that takes us. But that's very cool. And so I love being able to talk to you because it is really interesting to hear your perspective, but I also like being able to answer your questions. Your questions are always very thoughtful and timely. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, me too. And I love being on staff. It's just been incredible. I've been thinking about that lately, all the knowledge that I've accumulated on cults just from listening to the podcast while I'm editing videos. It's just the wealth of free knowledge that you give for people, it's life-saving and it's changing lives. So it's just incredible. And I think a lot of listeners, of course, and a lot of listeners who listen to this podcast, I've heard them, they've messaged me, they're like, oh, I love the IndoctriNation podcast. I'm glad I found it. It's amazing. So it's been great to kind of see that. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into today's topic. And, it's interesting. I think it's very important to get into definitions so we know what we're talking about. And how words can be thrown around and twisted and redefined in context to get a reaction in people. So indoctrination is a word that has been used a lot. But before we get into that, I'm really curious. So what is the definition of education?
So education I think, means exposure to information. And it means giving people an opportunity to acquire some new info, intel, the latest kind of information about something. And it also, and I think probably not enough, but it should entail more than it does, the process of teaching people how to learn, how to acquire, how to research, how to hold on to information, and also how to link information with other information, see how things build on each other. Like when you're taking, let's say, a history class, what you hope is that it will teach you about a part of history, but also help you understand how we got there. What were the things that led to that and what has happened since then? So there's this sense of connection to kind of the continuity of it, the chronology of it, sort of seeing big picture. And so it's teaching people information, but also how to learn information and why information is important.
And what is the definition of indoctrination?
So, when you're dealing with indoctrination, you're dealing, instead of educating people, because it's quite the opposite, you are dealing with the process of teaching people to believe what you want them to believe uncritically. So, there isn't the questioning, the educational process. I picture a group full of like a classroom filled with students with their hands raised. When you're doing indoctrination, no hands are raised. It doesn't matter what you understand of that, and it doesn't matter what question you want to ask. You just wait to be given more information that you need to absorb, that you need to know, and that you can't question, and that you also can't disagree with. So it really is just the absorption of information that a person or a group or country or whoever's doing the indoctrinating wants you to know. And that if you don't agree with it, there's something wrong with you or it's somehow punishable. And there's also a right and a wrong. So there's a right way to believe, and all the other ways are wrong. That's also different from education, where there are many sources of information and many ways to look at the same thing.